let's talk decluttering. Let's talk about easy stuff. Easy stuff is step 2 of my No Mess Decluttering Process. It's 5 steps that leads you through any space, no matter how overwhelming it is, no matter how much clutter there is, you can work through any mess with these 5 steps. But we're gonna focus in on step 2, which is easy stuff. Remember, this is a progress and only progress method, meaning you can do step 1, step 2, quit for a while, and you will have made this space better. There will be less in this space. It is worth your time, even if you don't make it all the way through the 5 steps. But let's zero in on easy stuff, because I know that sometimes for the person who is completely overwhelmed by their clutter, which is where I was when I started decluttering my house and came up with this process, it can feel like nothing is easy. So when I say easy stuff, it feels like, well, it's easy for other people to declutter. It's not easy for me. Everything is hard when I try to declutter. So let me just define exactly what I mean when I say get the easy stuff out. I mean anything that is in this space that you're working on that already has an established home elsewhere in your house, but for whatever reason, it's not in that home, it's here in this space, okay? So when you are looking for the easy stuff, which is after you have already removed trash, any trash that you can identify, I did a video on that recently, okay? When you get to the easy stuff, you are identifying easy stuff. You are not determining what's easy, you're identifying what's easy. What do I mean by that distinction? You are not deciding that something is easy. You are simply saying what in this space already has an established home. What do I already know what to do with? And I'm gonna get that item out, I'm gonna take it to its already established home. I don't have to think, I don't have to decide. It is simply putting it where it's supposed to be because I already know where it's supposed to be. That's what makes it easy, because the reality of decluttering is that while yes, there is a physical energy element, that is actually, for most situations, that is actually less of a daunting factor than the emotional energy that's going to be required to declutter. So our goal with these first 3 steps of the process, trash, easy stuff, and dead donations, today we're talking about easy stuff, is to remove things with 0 emotional energy expended so that we can make progress, make the space better, make the space less overwhelming before we ever have to expend any emotional energy. It might be physically difficult to get this large item that I dumped here because it's so heavy, I didn't want to carry it there, to that space. I get that that can feel like, oh my goodness, I have to do this. And yet there's no decision there. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the actual decision to make. Is it easy? Because there's no decision that needs to be made. I want to be clear that we never ask why in my process. Why is not a helpful word in the decluttering process. It's an easy word to ask. It's a word that we legitimately want to know why this thing is here when it should be there and I already know it has a home and why did I dump it? We're not going to worry about that because that's not useful. It doesn't actually help us move forward in the process. We're just going to take it there. So I want to give you permission. Take my permission if it helps you. If you're one of those people like me who's like, I don't need anybody's permission to do anything. I'm a grown-up adult. Then, you do whatever you want to do. I don't care. But I have decided for myself, I'm not going to worry about why. And I started making so much more progress when I stopped worrying about why I had this thing here that I already know goes to, I just cut that out. Like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, that's just wasting time for me to think about why. So that is not part of this process. It is just, this item has an established home. I'm going to take it to that home right now, get it out of this space. Lesson the amount of stuff in this space so it is less overwhelming to me so I can keep going and keep making progress, okay? Let me give you a few examples of easy stuff, right? So one of the things that I find again and again and again and again and again and again all the time when I am decluttering is I find pens and pencils, right? I find them in all sorts of spaces. All sorts of spaces where I would never look for them. Like I would never go looking in my bathroom drawer for pencils. And yet somehow, every time I declutter my bathroom drawer, I find a lot of pencils and pens. I don't worry about why, because that is not helpful, all right? Instead, I take the pens and pencils and I go put them in the place where I would look for them first. Usually, I can fill up my hands with enough pens and pencils to take one trip with a bunch of pens and pencils in my hands, okay? So this is just one of those things. Now, if that's where the other one was, it was on the floor. If I went to my bathroom drawer for pens and pencils, then that's where they need to be because that's where I would look for them first. But I don't. They have an established home elsewhere in my house, so I take them there now, okay? Another example of something that's easy, what happens to me a lot is I find easy stuff in one space that has an established home 3 feet away. So for example, I was working in our study, which is off of our master bedroom. It's where we have our printer and things like that, printer paper. And I had looked and looked. I was like, where is my printer paper? It's not in the place where I would look for it first. What is going on? I know I had some. Well, as I was working in that space, decluttering, probably a couple months after I had been looking for this paper and thinking, where in the world was it? I opened up the cabinet next to it to declutter and saw that, oh, for some reason, I'm not going to worry about why because what's the point? For some reason, I stuck the printer paper in the cabinet next to the one where I would look for it first. So that was easy. It already had an established home and that one was actually physically easy. And I think this is one of those things that is important to realize, especially for those who struggle with physical limitations, energy limitations, physical energy. Go ahead and look for the things that you could put in the place where you look for it first, the easy stuff. Like there's no decision to make, why is this in this drawer? It actually goes in this drawer. This is where I would look for it first. There almost always is a lot that you can do without walking across your house. You're still doing the thing. You're putting the thing in the place where it already has an established home and it's just right there. Like that happens more often than you would think. So let that knowledge, even if it's to prove me wrong, that it's not going to be that way in my house, whatever, let that knowledge give you the motivation to go ahead and see, is there anything easy in here that goes somewhere nearby where I wouldn't even have to make a big trek across the house? If you're physically able, make the big trek across the house. Get that stuff out of there because remember, our goal here is to remove as much as we can before we expend any emotional energy, any decision-making energy, and have it whittled down to the things that we actually need to be asking the decluttering questions about before we get to the decluttering questions, okay? All right, the third thing that I want to point out that happens a lot with easy stuff is procrasticlutter. I have a whole video on that here. Procrasticlutter is the stuff that doesn't feel like it's worth my decluttering time. It doesn't feel like I should take the time to deal with this right now because I'll have to deal with that eventually. And yet, if I don't, two things happen. First of all, I can work all the way through this space, get it decluttered, and the space still looks bad because there's a pile of clean laundry right here, okay? The other thing that can happen is that when I leave the pile of, that's the stuff that I needed to shred or I needed to file. And so I'm not going to worry about that right now because I already know what I'm going to do. That's what happens with procrasticlutter. Like we're like, I know what to do with that. I'll have to do that eventually. I'm going to spend my time on stuff that's more important. But when we don't deal with that, then sometimes we don't see the other things that are trash and easy stuff and need to leave this space that are kind of mixed around it. It's just harder to identify because remember, we're removing things and every time we do, it clarifies what is in this space that needs to be dealt with. Okay, does that make sense? Everybody got that? Easy stuff. It's the second step in the process. If you only get through the easy stuff step, you will have made progress. You'll make this space better. If you don't have any emotional energy to spend today and you think, I want to get stuff done, I just can't deal with it, give yourself permission. Just do the trash, which is the easiest of the easy stuff, and easy stuff, which has no decision making to be done. It's simply just removing things, because remember, we are not deciding what is easy. We are simply identifying what is easy. Okay? All right. Easy stuff is stuff that you don't even need to ask the decluttering questions about. It's just stuff that you know has an established home. Other than here, I'm gonna take it there right now. Okay, I hope that was helpful. I will talk to y'all next week. Bye.